Welcome to the Logan's Hour. Today we will have a real good show here. And now, I know something very unprecedented going to happen here. And I just want to say to all of my friends um, and my followers out there, this is not intentional. This just about excuse me. This is about speaking the truth and nothing about the truth. I know tonight I must sign a little too harsh, but I'm gonna be stepping on some toes. So probably it depends which political side you, and it depends. Those toes are going to be stepping on tonight. If you're gonna fall on the opposite side of it, you're gonna feel a little hurt. But like I said, we will be discussing everything that we're discussing tonight because there are too many things going on, and we will talk about them. Specifically, we'll talk about the CPP. We'll talk about the 40 part of the CPP as well, and we will also go to talk about the Unity Party or the Unity Party decision to walk away from the CPP, and we're going to critically go into that, and we're going to talk about Mr. Cumming case at the court, Mr. Cumming trial at the court. We will also go into Mr. Brownie J. Samuka as well. Then today's the birthday of my mom as well. So there are so many things I have to talk about. But today, I mean, you already ready for the noise. Eh? You already, yeah. So it depends which side you're on tonight. So probably you're not just like my tune tonight, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to say it as it is, and we're just going to put the issues and scrutinize those things that are necessary and those things that are unhealthy for our democracy, our young democracy. So on we will talk about the CPP, and specifically we'll make more emphasis on the CPP looking at a group of able-bodied men coming together and couldn't hold on to their word, and they have to fall apart the way they fall apart, and they left Liberian people broken. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Mr. Boakar's leadership, whether he fails or whether he succeeded in handling the CPP, because it's under his leadership that the CPP fall apart. We'll also talk about that. But before we go into politics, I first of all want to 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 send a message of condolences from this platform to the Sawyer family. We know that we lost the former transitional leader, Mr. Amos Claudius Sawyer, who was the transitional leader from 1990 to 1994. Yes, and Mr. Sawyer was born in 1945. So October 19, 2021. Mr. Sawyer last year, when he said he resigned from active politics, he was just going to play a cool role. So Mr. Sawyer wasn't involved with active politics. You know that Madam Salif appointed Mr. Sawyer at the Good Governance Commission. He had been involved with policy prescriptions when it comes to Liberia. Mr. Sawyer had been a very good man. Mr. Sawyer had been a humble character. He fought hard. Then the late Bacchus Matthew, they all fought hard for this multi-party democracy that we all enjoy today. So for you that don't know Mr. Amos Claudius Sawyer, this is the picture of Mr. Amos Claudius Sawyer. Um, Mr. Sawyer, he's a Liberian icon. He was a Liberian icon. He was from the progressive era. So then Mr. Sawyer, we've been hearing about his name. We felt he was really old, but Mr. Sawyer died at the age of 76 years old. So Mr. Sawyer just resigned from active politics October 19, 2021. That's when Mr. Sawyer said the reason for that is getting not to be involved with active politics. The reason was attributed to some health challenges that Mr. Sawyer faces. So on behalf of the Logan's Foundation and on behalf of the Logan's Hour and on behalf of the Indiana Young Men Association, we want to say our deepest condolences go to the family of Mr. Sawyer. We are really grieved, the whole entire country. We are sorry for this great loss. We want to say, may the good Lord accept your soul, Mr. Sawyer. Thank you, and have some peace wherever you are today. So that was it for Mr. Amos Sawyer. And notwithstanding, though we pay tribute to the dead, but we also have to remember the living. Today, if you're just following us, today is one of the happiest days in my life. Today is the birthday of my lovely mommy, Mrs. Mary Boyino Logan. Today she turned 70 years old, young and beautiful lady. Those of you that don't know Mrs. Mary Logan, I'm about to just this. So that was just a picture of my mommy. Today's her birthday. Today she turned 70 years old, and she stayed kicking and moving. You see how healthy she looks. So I want to say happy birthday to you, mommy. We pray that the good Lord always strengthen you, always keep you strong as you are. And thank you for having those beautiful children that you have today. Imagine with all of those children that you have, and you still look beautiful and healthy. I'm just going to show my mom for the second time, then we'll go straight to our talking point for tonight. Thank you. Alrighty. Enough of that. So tonight it is a real good one that we're going to step on some toes. Some of my friends, if you know you have a very thin skin and you support a specific political party, I advise that you shouldn't come to watch this show tonight because this is not intentional. So we shouldn't meet out there and we don't speak to each other because of these critical political issues that we're always discussing on these platforms around. So tonight we will go into some of the burning issue in Liberia. I think if you've been following of late, the first topic is Mr. Brownie J. Samuka. So Mr. Brownie J. Samuka, as you all know, the Senate have wrote the Justice Ministry, and that Mr. Brownie J. Samuka will not be taking his seat anymore. So the people of Lofa County, I'm so sorry that you went to the polls and you overwhelmingly elected Mr. Brownie J. Samuka, but Mr. Brownie J. Samuka would not be certificated and he would not be taking the seat of the Liberian Senate. So the Senate called for by-election in Lofa. This is the Senate called for by-election in Lofa. Mr. Brownie Samuka, the Liberian Senate has retained the National Election Commissions. So, and in their ratings, they announced the vacancy that the seat of Lofa County, and they the Liberian Senate evoked Article 37 that spoke about inability to serve. So, Mr. Brownie J. Samuka, because of the inability, according to the court, Mr. Samuka have some disabilities. So, except Mr. Samuka could have settled those disabilities, he was going to be eligible to take his seat. But right now, Mr. Samuka is disqualified from taking his seat. So the Lofa County, they have an opening. So the Liberian Senate has written the National Election Commission of a vacancy. So the vacancy that they have now is the vacancy of Lofa County. So the people of Lofa, I'm sorry. But let's talk about some of the issues that led to Mr. Brownie James Samuka contesting in this whole election that brought him to the how he elected and he cannot take his seat. You see, sometimes when we're talking about leaders being far-sighted and people take this to be for joke. Imagine some of those leaders in the opposition political party, the CPP, who chair the whole entire affairs. Because when you come to see the election that brought Mr. Samuka to power, that's the same election that brought Mr. Darius DeLong to power. And Mr. J. Brownie Samuka, Mr. Samuka won with a very high margin. Lofa County senatorial seat, Mr. Samuka received 20,431 votes. And nobody else came close to Mr. Samuka except for the independent candidate, Mr. Joseph Jala. He came up with 13,968 votes. So with all of the wisdom, with all of the lawyers, with all of the intellectuals that are in the CPP today, or in the former CPP, they sat down there, they allowed somebody who was in court, who had a court case against him, who could possibly be guilty of some of those charges, and they allowed him to run on the CPP ticket. With all, even a second thought, that where if this man is not exonerated from the charges, what was going to happen? But I remember that somebody said the other day, what's his name? Mr. Steve Zago. He said the relationship between Mr. Samuka and Mr. Joe Boaka is like a father and son relationship. Because according to him, he said that Mr. Samuka, he was the one who advocated for Mr. Boyka to go as the vice president to Madame Saliv. So, you know, that's why sometimes when you follow the politics back home, you follow Liberian politics, it makes you feel so sad. So because Mr. Samuka advocated that Mr. Boyka goes second to Madame Saliv, so in return, he will pay Mr. Samuka back. And the hope of the Lofa people, Lofian or Lofen, their hopes have been dashed by the way. Imagine a senatorial candidate, somebody who could pull this amount of votes out. Lofa County senatorial seat, Brandon J. Samuka received 20,431 votes. In a general and presidential election, if you can get one person who will give you 20,431 votes, that person is not a small potato. That's why Mr. Boaka was trying to ride on as well. Because if you can get Mr. Samuka to give you 20,431 votes, because this guy who was going to consider Joseph Jala, he was an independent candidate. He pulled 13,968 votes, or built 13,968 votes. It could be shared. Out of the ruling party could have a conversation with him. But something that the entire CPP folks that up to today, I do not understand. So they sat down there and allowed Mr. Samuka, who was convicted, went to court, and he was tried and came out guilty. And we still have senators passing around the corridors and complaining that the trial was unfair, it was unjust. But they had all the power to talk to the court to subpoena Madame Salif, who could have been the best person to exonerate Mr. Brownie J. Samuka from this case. The Supreme Court said Mr. Samuka, he failed to pay what he's supposed to pay. So they're supposed to remain in jail until the balance is liquidated. So until that balance is liquidated, the amount they will be paying will be $25 per month. So until Mr. Brownie J. Samuka complete this identical payment, Mr. Brownie J. Samuka is going to be in jail for long. So who could we say is the basic problem to Mr. Samuka problems today, or the CPP losing their seat in Lofa County? Because I can rest assure you, Lofa County 2022, if there's election or by-election in Lofa County, Mr. Boaka might just lift another person here, but who knows? CDC have been making some significant money in Lofa County. CDC might likely just win Lofa County. if the opposition win Lofa County, they have to win Lofa County collectively. They cannot just win Lofa County with just an individual. And when you go back to the CPP framework document, it shows that even the Unity Party cannot feed any candidate in Lofa County. The ALP cannot feed any candidate in Lofa County. So that's a whole big thing that's happening for the opposition right there in Lofa County. You see, this CPP issue that they overlook and they keep jumping from in it just emotionally, as I can just consider it, it's a real problem. It's a real problem. Because Mr. Brandon J. Samuka won Lofa County with 20,000 votes. The person who came second to Mr. Samuka won with 13,000 votes. Imagine 20,000 Lofen. 20,000 Lofen. They are waiting. Now they cannot have the person they voted for. What happened? Was there a leadership deficit from the parts of the leaders of the CDC or the CPP? Was there a problem from the heads or from the head of the Unity Party? Or the whole entire Unity Party team couldn't just carry on a thorough review and scrutinize who's supposed to go and represent them? You see, so the issue with Mr. Samuka will not take his seat. And it's possible when you go to Lofa County and when the ruling party win Lofa County, trust me, the opposition will be in serious disarray. Already the opposition is in serious dilemma that they are overlooking. The thing that Mr. Boaka did a few days to withdraw the Unity Party from the CPP, it might haunt him. It might haunt him real. Mr. Boaka and the rest of the folks, they might just end up in court for the rest of the election. They might just end up in court for the rest of the election. What do I mean? When you go back to the CPP framework document, when it comes to dissolution, when it comes to how do we separate, how do we move our separate ways, there are clear laws that is slated in that whole thing. When you go back here, it talks about intended mechanism to conflict resolution. It talks about how do we solve problem. Which kind of channel do we use when you go to grievances on the CPP framework document? It right on Google. You can just Google it, CPP framework document. You will see that they will give you the processes through which dispute can be addressed. Confusion with other political parties, members political parties, how can they address dispute? Now, it is clear that Mr. Boakai, Mr. Yuri, and Madam Yobli Kanga Lawrence, they arbitrarily, with all the consent of the other political parties, pull out of the CPP without following all of the rudimentaries, all of the proper procedures in leaving the CPP. Is that the kind of person we're going to take to be the next president of the Republic of Liberia? I will come to Mr. Comey on the case, because the good thing about me, I can speak from a balanced perspective, because Mr. Comey, I do not belong to his party. Mr. Boaka, I do not belong to his party as well. But those basic steps, those basic procedures that people have to follow. If you want to become president of the Republic of Liberia, if you start disrespecting your common laws that you put together to govern you as an institution, only because of greed. And I followed Mr. Boaka press statement yesterday, And I said to somebody, I want to speak about Mr. Barker press conference. Mr. Barker said something in his press conference that, which of course I know that it was very sad. Mr. Barker shouldn't have just lied. Because he's a stick man. Mr. Barker have all the wisdom, according to what people say every time he has a wisdom, he has wisdom. I don't know from which perspective to speak if they say he comes with a lot of wisdom. But Mr. Barker said this in his statement yesterday. He said, our willingness to continue a CPP depends largely on our honest interactions and cooperation. Sadly, as of now, we see no way forward. And we have all decided to go our separate ways. That's Mr. Boakai. How can Mr. Boakai, as the head of the CPP, sadly come up and lie to the public that they have all agreed to go their separate ways? By the National Election Commissions, the document that came out the other day, they recognized Mr. Musa Hassan Bility as the acting chairman of the Liberty Party. Mr. Alexander Benedict Cummings, he's the standard bearer and political leader of the Alternative National Congress. They were never informed. I listened to Mr. Bility yesterday. He was never informed of that. So how can Mr. Boakai even sit and allow the little children, Mo Ali, the likes of Amin Mudar, to just write paper and just give it to him and go and read it as a political leader? How can Mr. Boakai come to the public and pull this out and say that we have all decided to go our separate ways? You and who decided to go your separate ways? The ALP pulled out of the CPP, according to them, but they never presented any document of pulling out. They only pulled out because they say, oh, we pull out. But there are documents that you're supposed to follow. The ALP know that if they do not present the proper documents to the National Election Commissions, they will not feel any candidate come 2023. Mr. Barker, you know that very well as well. You know the agreement that brought every one of you together. You know the internal mechanism to address problems. We never saw any of those follow. Mr. Barker, you said when you were in the United States that when you get back to Liberia, you individually, you consider yourself as a problem solver, as a leader. You go back to Liberia and you saw the problem. You never made any public statement. You called meeting one or twice. People never show up to the meeting. You ran away. Only for you to come back after we cannot hear you speak on any issues, any national issues. People die in Nukutown. We never heard anything from Mr. Boakai. CPP tearing apart, people going to court, leaders of the CPP going to court as the head of the CPP. Mr. Boakai said nothing, do nothing, sat by supinely. Only live in the time we heard that Mr. Boakai was coming off a press conference, and we hear Mr. Boakai say he's withdrawing from the CPP. In this day and age, is that our creepy monster Liberia is raising gradually? Is Mr. Boakai just good to be second? Are we just going to sit and just allow the little boys just script and bring somebody on as the next president who do not speak to no national issues? Like I said here tonight, some of my friends going to get a problem with me. But Mr. Boakai's decision yesterday to walk away from the CPP, that was a poor leadership decision. And if I was a unity partisan, I was going to be very ashamed of myself to call myself a unity partisan. And I'm passing around and supporting that kind of dumb idea that came up from my political leader yesterday. How can my political leader go and read the whole entire framework document, talk about internal mechanism to address problem within, and even spoke about a standard? Mr. Boakai know every aspect of how do we address the problem within the CPP. It came out to the public, wanted to say, and moreover, it's just not the point that Mr. Boakai is walking off of the CPP, but Mr. Boakai says something in his statement in his statement that I felt this is sad to hear Mr. Bwaka say this. This is what Mr. Bwaka said yesterday. He said, even though the CPP did not work out, the Unity Party is working with other political parties and individuals. We assure you that there will be a more formidable and respectable partnership. With who? With who? Are you afraid of competition? They're just going to have another partnership and tell somebody, say, I just want to be the head of the partnership. There'll be primaries. You have to be tested. You can just say you've been vice president all true. Nobody have tested your leadership abilities. So you can just run on me and just say you want to be the head. I know you've been testing. All we hear from those in the CPP or the Unity Party, they all will boast of numbers. You think the number that Mr. Dara Dillon had during the December election, the Maserati senatorial election, Mr. Dara Dillon won with how many votes? 354,000 votes, 898. That gave Mr. Dillon 40.27 votes. So if Mr. Dillon won with this number here, this number you're seeing right here. So this is the number that CPP put out. This number never came from Unity Party. This number never came from ANC. This number never came from ALP. Why would Mr. Bwaka say that and be controlled by ALP that have less than 30,000 people? Then you see Mr. Ure all smarting because he feels he's pulling Mr. Bwaka by his nose. We complain that Mr. Weah is a remote control president. Do we want to take another remote control president? Is Mr. Bwaka going that same direction to be controlled by just people around him? You allow people to give you something to just go and read without rationalizing it? Is that how we want to see? This is kind of leader we envision. Mr. Bwaka have the number. Mr. Bwaka have the number. Which number Mr. Bwaka have that we will boast of? The numbers do not remain the same. The numbers are not 1, 2, 3 to say, well, the number will always remain the same. Mr. Bwaka do not control nobody. They are not sheep in basket at election time. You put it out, say, you say, can't go and vote. No. The numbers can change. They are individuals. The mind changes at any time. You think coming 2023, Mr. Bwaka can just go and just win the election first round? You see, the things that more people who are looking right now, Mr. Bwaka political life is on the line this 2023. After 2023, Mr. Bwaka is done. After 2023, Mr. Bwaka is done. If Mr. Bwaka do not win this election 2023, there will be no more Bwaka. Bwaka is gone forever. Listen, I'm not against Mr. Bwaka, please. I know if you're out there, you think I'm against Mr. Bwaka. I'm not against Mr. Bwaka, but I'm against Mr. Bwaka poor leadership style. Mr. Bwaka has served from behind for 12 years. I think that have been rubbing on him to the point that he even in front to make the decision he stayed thinking as a vice president. He stayed waiting on Mo Ali, Amin Muda, and the rest of the other guys in the Unity Party to write scripts and give it to him to read. I think Mr. Bwaka have to be very extemporaneous sometimes. We can always keep waiting for Mr. Bwaka to just come out to the public and just spew the wrong things out. And we're not saying it to him. The Liberia we want to see. This Liberia honor Mr. Weah. We are not happy enough to say here we want people to be insulting our leaders and insulting our president or the first family every time. But you think under Mr. Bwaka administration, you think everything just going to fix itself? You think all the Liberians just going to relax and be happy and say, oh, send Mr. Bwaka is the president now, oh, we just allow it, we're not going to say pape, the pape, that old pape. There will be more prophecy that will rise up from other continents. So Mr. Bwaka decisions before he goes to the public to make those decisions, he have to be very strategic. He have to read over the decisions. He have to analyze it as the wise person in the house before he go out to make the pronouncement. How can Mr. Bwaka, the leader of the CPP, go out and lie to the public that all the political leaders of the CPP, they agreed to go their separate ways? only because Mr. Comey want to go, say Mr. Uri want to go his separate ways. Yobli Kaka want to go her separate ways. Mr. Boaka agreed that everybody want to go their separate ways. So Mr. Boaka will, or even reading the CPP document, will even discussing the issues I have to talk about intent of mechanics in the soft problem. He ain't know all of those factors and walk out of the CPP. Let's go back to Mr. Boaka basic errors that he have made since he took over from Yobli Kanga Lawrence. Mr. Boaka, as the leader, took over the CPP. The first pronouncement from Mr. Boaka, I'm the wisest man in the room. I'm going to fix the CPP problem. Did Mr. Boaka fix the CPP problem? I have talked my own. You have the time to talk your own. Did Mr. Boaka fix the problem in the CPP? But it is under Mr. Boaka administration that the CPP have been torn apart. Mr. Boaka yesterday gave President Weah his second term in power. It is the mistakes from Mr. Boaka that gave Mr. Weah the second term in power. Now Mr. Boaka come to us here and saying there will be new alliance. They're going to form a new marriage. Now, if you go to another party to form a marriage and the party say, Mr. Boaka, we have to go to primaries. What Mr. Boaka going to say? See what Mr. Boaka say here. These are Mr. Boaka's statements that they're going to find a new political marriage. Mr. Boaka said to you today, you exhibited very poor leadership when it comes to the CPP. Very poor leadership. Honor Edison Cummings, Honor Yobli Kanga Lawrence, Honor Benin Ayure, they fought to hold the CPP apart. I expected you, as the wisdom in the house, as the older man in the house, to fight hard and hold the CPP together. The CPP shouldn't have turned apart under your leadership. That shows weakness when it comes to leaders. Leaders, every leader under the word or in this word, fix things. Leaders do not tear things apart. That shows failure because it was under your administration when the CPP fought apart. What was the wisdom, Mr. Boaka? I expected from your press conference to lay down the procedures that you try in your wisdom to bring the party together. 4 political parties. Your party is one, ALP, Liberty Party, ANC. If Mr. Boaka cannot work to put those 4 political parties together, how can Mr. Boaka then control 15 political subdivisions of Liberia? You think that is possible? It's not possible. I know a lot of people, when you support your political side, when people are talking about it, you get so angry. Well, you can get angry. When we meet, we will still speak. But we're talking about the poor leadership style that when it comes to some of our political leaders. Mr. Boaka took over the CPP. What we expected from Mr. Boaka? To try every way possible. The internal mechanism to address grievances, they are all there. It is written in the CPP framework document. What Mr. Boaka needed to do. What Mr. Boaka needed to do. Mr. Boaka never did. It's in your own framework document, Mr. Boaka. It's right to section 7.5.2, leadership of the ad hoc grievance council. You never follow this. Internal dispute resolution is in your own framework document. They say when there is a dispute, the alliance should set up an ad hoc council, grievance council comprising of 2 persons from each of its members to constitute its dispute resolution platform. One of the 2 persons so nominated should be an alternative. So, Mr. Boaka, what did you do? How did you jump over all of these procedures to solve the CPP problem? And you jump to withdrawing the Unity Party from the CPP. I need some of my friends to come here and tell me how that happened. How Mr. Barker slip and go straight to we are leaving the CPP. Well, we try to solve all the problem. We cannot solve the problem. Now we're leaving the CPP. So where are you leaving the CPP? So where are you going? They are laid down procedures. You can just leave the CPP and go. You got nowhere to go, Mr. Barker. They're going to come for you. They're going to put you back in the CPP. They're going to put you back in the CPP. There's nowhere you got to go. So how did we reach this point, Mr. Walker, that the Unity Party will walk away from the CPP? We're all addressing any issues. Oh, so that what we come and do, that what we will be doing now, we'll be running away from our problems. Mr. Walker, I know my girls are looking at me right now, Aye and the rest of their children. But the decision to walk away from the CPP, I feel it was a poor one. I feel it was a poor leadership decision. And if you're in the hobby of listening to Mo Ali, Amin Muda, and the rest of the guys, you need to desist, Mr. Barker. Because the bus stops with you. Everything starts with you. Like we always beat on Mr. President. We always beat on George Weah. Oh, Mr. President, this is not right. This is not right. But Mr. Barker, this was your perfect opportunity. Perfect opportunity to still vote from everywhere to allow people to come and see your leadership style. This was the time that you had to demonstrate your leadership abilities. But now it's standing. Everything fall on deaf ears. See here. This is your own writing in your own framework document. You people put it together. You found out on section 7.5.2 on the leadership of the AHO and Grievances Council. You people put this in your framework document. They are laid down procedures. They are laid down procedures to leave the CPP. You think the rest of the other folks will just allow you to leave the CPP? Now they're going to sit and just watch you go and they say, oh, the people walk away from the CPP. Let me say this. You're not going to feed any candidate. The Unity Party will not have any candidate in this 2023 election. And the ALP will not have any candidate in the 2023 election. Because if you go to the National Election Commission, you will have to present yourself that you came from a political institution. So even if you found a new marriage, let's say you found a new political marriage and call yourself any name, but each of you people belong to an institution. And that institution that you belong to, that institution is already part of the CPP. So now, you think the whole issue that has to do with court trial, you think it's going to end now? Mr. Comey got to get a right to go to court and allow the court to prolong your entire candidacy. Mr. Barker, I think that was a poor leadership decision. That was a poor leadership decision. And when, if you wanting to become the next president of the Republic of Liberia, I think you can do better than this. You can do better than this. You see, like I said, I told somebody yesterday, the moment I heard that from Mr. Barker, I was like, boom. President, we are president again for the next 6 years. And that was because of Mr. Barker's decision yesterday. You can allow emotions. Heron Costa and the rest of the other folks, they're just spewing things out. We want to walk away. We will walk away right now. And we have to lead the CPP. And if we don't lead the CPP, I will tell my bazooka to you. Boom. Out of here, you're thinking that he's going to put all your stuff outside. And now you agree to leave the CPP, Mr. Uri. Mr. Uri still have age in your favor. After this election, Mr. Uri can still run for the next election. After this election, Mr. Cummings can still run for the next election. But what happened to you, Mr. Boakai? You will be fading away. Currently, you can barely stand to read for an hour. So you have to know that if you miss this opportunity, you are done. You are done. Look at this statistic here. Look at these numbers here. See this number right here. 2017 election first round. CDC secured how many votes? 596,000, 0.37, represented 38.37 votes. How much Ambassador Barker had? Ambassador Barker obtained what? 446,716 votes, representing 28.7%. In the second round, President Weah had 732,185 votes. That gave Mr. Weah 61.54%. How much Mr. Barker had? How much Mr. Barker had? In the first round, Mr. Barker was having what? 446. In the second round, Mr. Barker won to what? 457. So see the disparity, see the numbers. See the numbers. If Mr. Weah had 596,000, Mr. Weah in the second round, he jumped as far from 500,000 to 732,000. Why Mr. Barker couldn't just leave from the 400,000. First round, he was in 400,000. Second round, he remained in the 400,000. So you think today, these election results that I'm demonstrating here from 2017, if this continues, you think Mr. Barker can win this election from George Weah? You know, I know from the inception of Mr. Weah administration, there were some errors when he started to build complexes and condominiums with the Liberian people money, quote unquote, allegedly. There were a whole lot of myths, 16 billion, 16 million, June 7, auto protests. Now, when you look at the country situation, the country is calm. So the only bastion of hope of the Liberian people was the CPP. So if you look at the grown-up guys who came together and gave the Liberian people hope, and in the dying meaning they can dash their hope and say they will form another political party just few days to 2023 and they're going to win election, Mr. Barker said, you are joking. This election, it is the last chance. After this election, I don't want to say something different, but you will not even be having the strength to even campaign from Magibi to Maserado. Why can you grab? Why you couldn't make use of this opportunity? Why you couldn't exercise the leadership abilities and all of those innovations and wisdom that we have heard that the former vice president had? That he's man with wisdom. He has served for this length of time. He has served for that length of time. You see, sometimes when the former vice president said he was a race car pop, I want to take that comment very seriously. You see, there's these things called spirit. It rubs on people. The spirit of being second has rubbed on the vice president, on the former vice president, to the point where Mr. Barker is just laying back. People have to tell him to get in. Mr. Barker, people died at West Point. You saw almost 1920 Liberians, the people that you want to govern tomorrow. Mr. Barker said nothing, do nothing. The CPP tearing apart, Mr. Barker do nothing, said nothing. The economy is horrible. President Weah went out and gave him year-end political recitation. Mr. Barker gave his speech or his rebuttal to his surrogates. You think we want to hear from Mr. Mo Ali? Mr. Mo Ali have credibility issue. Mr. Mo Ali was once upon a time telling somebody's daughter to abort pregnancy. You do want to hear from Mr. Amin Mullah? Amin Mullah trying to get power to protect his businesses. If you are the arrowhead, why can't you speak? Are we raising another George Weah with all the criticism that Weah is unfit? Then you proving to be unfit? I know some of my Unity Party brother internet, we are getting involved, but it's just the truth. Mr. Barker, over the time, his leadership abilities that he have demonstrated since he took over the CDC or the CPP, He's proving to be unfit to lead the country. I can rest assure you that. Right now, as it stands, I cannot guarantee anybody that Mr. Barker will be the best president of Liberia come 2023. I can't. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. But I can rest assure you that I cannot put my neck on the chopping board that Mr. Barker will be the best option come 2023. I think we still need to look for that option. Liberian people need to look for that better option. If Mr. Barker, in terms of difficulties, every leader comes to permanence in difficult times. Mr. Barker is running from difficult times. Mr. Barker don't want to be tested. Then how can you lead? Testing time comes to test your abilities. That's why even in the Bible, most of the people that God used, he have to test you to know your weakness. Tests come to show your weakness. And Mr. Barker's weaknesses have been shown. We're not looking at the surrogates, the Moali, the Amemuda, and the rest of the other people. We are looking at the arrowheads. You will be making the decision of the country. So are we just going to sit and just allow one creepy monster again? That one day they just say, oh, tomorrow Barker is the next president. Oh, that Barker will want. Why you want Barker? Because he's the only man with wisdom. But why he's not showing all this wisdom? Wisdom is application. Why is Mr. Barker wisdom? He's not applying it. This wisdom that everybody boasts of, that he's the wisdom in the house. Honor Mr. Barker, with all the wisdom, the CPP have fallen apart. With all the wisdom, Mr. Barker said nothing. They are in court. Mr. Barker do nothing. Only in the dying meaning, Mr. Barker forgot about all the procedures to withdraw from the CPP and announce that we will leave the CPP. This is Mr. Barker's statement. This is Mr. Barker's statement that they will leave the CPP. It's a sad news. This show Mr. Barker's lack of leadership. They show Mr. Barker is not the kind of a tough revolutionary president that we all envisage. They show that Mr. Barker do not belong to the current order. And Liberians, we have to start thinking twice. Because if you compare those numbers, if you compare these numbers, 2017 and now, Mr. Barker just gave Josh Weah his second round. Because comparatively, when you look at these numbers all here that I'm showing you, 2017, that President Weah, first round, President Weah came from 596,337. So if Mr. Weah can come from 596,037, representing 38.37%, and Mr. Barker obtained 446,000, representing 28.7%. In the second round, Mr. Barker left to the same 500,000. They've seen 400,000, while Mr. Weah jumped from the 400,000 to the 700,000. In the second round, that's why we see political play. That's why we see other political parties. There's conglomeration of other parties coming together. So you think Mr. Barker can leave the Liberty Party aside, and leave the ANC aside, and leave the ACOB aside, and even leave the Cassell Party aside and win election? It's a sad one. Mr. Barker's political future have been dashed. And I'm sorry to say, we are in February, for now to December. Mr. Barker will not recover. He cannot recover easily. I'm sorry if I step on some of my friends' toes out there, but it's just the issue. So, Mo Ali, Amin Muda, and the rest of the other folks who followed Mr. John Balu yesterday. John Balu, former Maryland senator candidate or senator. John Balu said, leaving the CPP at this time it was one of the worst decisions Mr. Barker have ever made in his life. And he feels they're going to hunt Mr. Barker. And I believe that that statement from Mr. Balu yesterday, they're going to hunt Mr. Bwaka greatly. Because you see, it's not just about leaving the CPP. It's not just leaving the CPP. What matter here is following all those procedures. We put documents together that we all have to follow. In the end, we disregard that. It's almost like you coming to power and not following the Constitution. That's how I see those decisions. Mr. Barker, to my friends, uh, those that with Mr. Barker, I want to say this is not personal. This is just talking about the leader style, Mr. Barker, and how Mr. Barker can do better instead of just dashing his political future. Yeah, Mr. Barker he could do better, or he could have done better than to just dash his political future. I feel Mr. Barker never did enough to protect the CPP because under Mr. Barker administration, the entire CPP fall apart. That show very poor leadership under Mr. Barker. Every leader under the sun, the Martin Luther King, the great Muhammad Ali, every leader fixed things. Under Mr. Barker, under his administration, he damaged things. So some of my friends who support Mr. Barker, tell Mr. Barker, I said it, Mr. Philip said you got Logan. That was a very poor leadership style of him. By pulling all of the CPP at this critical time where we all could have worked it out together, but because he wanted to please one of his stooge, that's why he walked out. Mr. Uri, why would you follow Mr. Uri? Mr. Uri have less than 30,000 people. Mr. Uri entire political party, when you count the numbers of people who part of the ALP, like Mr. Uri and his children. So why would you just damage your political future? Why would Mr. Barker damage his political future at this time? Mr. Barker is already in his 70s. After this election, Mr. Barker cannot go back. And just yesterday, Mr. Barker just announced the second term of President Weah. And I felt it was sad. I felt it was sad. I feel it was sad. All right, so enough of Mr. Barker. I know some of my friends they out there and they're talking about, oh my man, lead the man small, lead the man small. But yeah, it is what it is. We have to talk the truth. When our people sleep, like political leaders, when they are sleeping, we have to tell them. We have to tell them because Liberia is all that we have. Imagine if the person who cannot address it critical situation at this time, sleeping gradually and pulling out of or marriage without having divorce document. It's sad. Where are you going? Where are you going? So all the things with Liberian politicians and all the things they can be doing, it's just another means to just fool the Liberian people, just feel the Liberian people so stupid that we found this other party because it's not going the way we wanted to go, or because it's not going my direction, we would just pull out. Or because maybe what's this man named Mr. Cummings or Alexander Benedict Cummings said he wanted a competition, they should go to primaries. So they design all the book stuff, talk about voter perception survey, the design, all the block voting that was never in the framework document. And they agreed that they were going to go to that too. Now they're talking about if they're going to found a next political marriage, they have to anybody they're going to find a political alliance with, they got to agree that you have to go second to Mr. Barker. Why Mr. Barker just want to go first with all competition? That's my point. This is the thing that sometimes when I think of it gets me so scary. Why would Mr. Barker want to go just from being vice president straight to the presidency with all being tested? When other people try to test Mr. Barker leadership style, other people get angry with that. Mr. Barker took on The CPP. The first place we should have tested Mr. Boakai leadership style. Mr. Boakai failed miserably. On the Yoblinkaga Lawrence, with all the way the CPP were hanging and shaking, the CPP never fell apart. On Joseph Yuma Boakai, the CPP fell apart. So that showed a complete poor leadership style. And I believe Mr. Boakai can do better than that. Mr. Boakai can do better than that. Because in an era now for Mr. Boakai is in Mr. Weah's favor. Mr. Weah is just waiting to go back for the next 6 years. Because if you go to election right now, and the election goes to second round, obviously the election is going to go to second round. And when the election goes to second round, what happened? What happened? It means George Weah. ANC people are going to follow CPP and they're going to follow CDC. All the disenchanted people from all the other political parties, they're going to follow CDC. You think how Mr. Darius DeLong in this just in the election, Maserado have 777,000 voters, registered voters. Mr. DeLong was able to pull up 354,000. The numbers don't lie. These are the numbers Mr. DeLong pulled out in Maserado. If Mr. DeLong can pull out this number, 354,898 votes, you think what because of Unity Party? This was because of collective efforts. The Liberian people felt, now we have a chance. We have a party or collaborations that would take us from this calamity. Now the bunch of power-seeking, one of my friends can call them good for nothing political leaders, gave the Liberian people hope, only to dash their hope in the end. To tell them that, oh, now yeah, man. Sorry. So now I know the Boakai people vest. I've been dealing with Mr. Boakai a little, but that's just the truth. Mr. Boakai just have to do better. Now let's talk about Mr. Alexander Cummings. Well, I know Mr. Boakai exhibited poor leadership by putting all of the CPP with all following all the rudimentaries, all the laid down principles that he had to follow to leave the CPP. He never did. He and Mr. Ure arbitrarily, with all consent from the rest of the other people, or with all consent from the rest of the other two political parties who part of the CPP, that is the Unity Party, the Liberty Party, and the ANC, and to walk away from the CPP. Then Mr. Boakai lied in his statement yesterday. He said we have decided. He and who decided to go their separate ways? It was Mr. Boakai and Mr. Ure. Those are two political leaders. But Yoblinkaga, she's not a political leader. Yoblinkaga refused to pay her dues. Until she can pay her dues, she will be reinstated. But until she can pay her dues. So that's it for Mr. Boakai tonight. We're not going to go any further with Mr. Boakai, but I can rest assure you what Mr. Boakai did yesterday. It was just the pathway to President Weah's second term in power. President Weah came here with all the things Mr. Boakai could be saying, oh, the country is bad, the country is horrible. President Weah said this in his annual statement. He said, based on report, I can state categorically and with confidence that the state of our economy is stable and growing, and that the state of the nation is peaceful and strong. You got a powerful statement that President Weah said. We expected President Joseph Yuma Boakai, Ambassador Boakai, to rebut this with a lot of energy and vigor coming from his voice. He gave his speech to surrogates. He gave his speech to Mo Ali, Amin Muda. Amin Muda only want power to protect his business. Mo Ali is already morally bankrupt. He was seen on a tip telling a little girl to go and abort her pregnancy only because he want to save his political future. Are these kind of people we're going to be listening to? Are the people going to be listening to? There's more need to be done. There's more need to be done. We have to hold our leaders accountable. We're just going to allow a bunch of handbags and stooges come and take over and just control things and make it move as business as usual. Let's go to Mr. Cummings too. Mr. Barker had his flaws, and Mr. Cummings also had his. Mr. Cummings, just this few days, we heard from his lawyer. And Mr. Cummings' lawyers, they are presenting this argument that there were no original framework document. My question to the Cummings and his lawyer, or the folks and his defense team, which document did you submit to the National Election Commission? Which document did Mr. Cummings submit to the National Election Commission? If for any reason, if you submit any document, then those are the original documents. This is what Mr. Cummings and his lawyer are saying. There's no original framework document signed May 19, 2020. Cummings' lawyer wrote Judge Joman Jala. So if there was no original document signed May 19, 2020, the one that was signed is considered as the original. It's possible they could be making mistake with the dates. So another thing that Mr. Cummings keep doing that I feel that he shouldn't have been, or he can be doing this, is this issue of keep accusing the current government. Every little thing that happening, he feel that Mr. Uric have been manipulated by the government of Liberia. Why Mr. Uric cannot be manipulated by your other folks, the other colleagues? You have Yobli Kaka Lawrence. You have Benedict Uric. They're all within the political parties. You see, if you keep distracting yourself and going to find where Mr. Uric getting this knowledge from, or how Mr. Uric running behind you with these kind of cases, I'm sorry, Mr. Cummings, you will just be another person that will not take part into this 2023 election because you may just not participate. You have to face the reality. If for any reason there was nothing done with this document, and you feel that the document you submitted to the National Election Commission is what you have, and when you submitted, there was nothing tampered with, what's the hell in producing those documents? There's no problem. If you're very confident enough, those documents, even the court has the power to subpoena the National Election Commission to have those documents. So instead of you delaying, all I think, Mr. Cummings, you need to do, you need to produce what you have. Your people said this. Mr. Cummings said in his word that there's no original document. He cannot produce no document because in the first place there were no original document signed. Maybe the word original add to it because they felt that you had the whole entire copy. My question to the whole entire document here is, there were 5 documents signed during this whole program or processes here. And they were signed virtually. It was signed through Zoom on May 19, 2020. Individuals signed, the political leaders of the 4 political parties signed by Zoom. So when they signed this document, they gave it to Mr. Cummings, and Mr. Cummings, what did you do with them? What did you do with them? So you say the document signed separately via Zoom. Some came on public scrutiny and criticism. That necessitated a reversion by a team of lawyers, a decision which has reached through a resolution. Okay, decision have been reached through a resolution. You agree that, okay, we'll have the lawyer to revise the document and review the document and give it back to whoever is the chairman at the time. So you were the chairman. They gave you this document. What happened to the document? The document that you receive, that's why you have to present. That's why you have to present. So, Mr. Cummings, you two are adding insult to injury. Because if you are or were the chairman of the CPP at the time, and the revised document, it was reviewed, amended, and was handed to the CPP by the lawyers, Then the person who that document was presented to was the chairman, and you was the chairman. So instead of dragging this issue, prolonging your own political future, you better address the issue as well. The same way you heard me discussing Mr. Barker here tonight, few days from now, I'm gonna just be on you as well. The reason I'm capable of discussing any political leader in Liberia because I'm not part of any political party. My primary interest is Liberia. I have no political alliance. I have never affixed my signature to no political party. So I can speak to any political leader or anybody who want to become president of my country the way I believe that is better and appropriate. When it comes to the way forward of Liberia, I want the best for my country. I don't want people just coming lying to us and just when you put them in power, they just put all of their friends again. Those things that I used to do back in the days. Everybody around Joseph Walker just because they want hustle. Everybody around Mr. Cummings because they want hustle. Keep telling the political leaders things that they want to hear and not things they need to know. If you're just following us, you are on the Logan's Hour. We have been here for an hour now. We try to discuss some critical national issues. But under the microscope on that, we put former Vice President Joseph Walker. We were trying to scrutinize him. So if you don't know, today is the birthday of my beautiful mom, Mary Logan. Thank you so much for watching. That's just the birthday of my mom. So if you just joined us, you're on the Logan's Hour. We're on former Vice President Josiah Walcott, and we spoke about Mr. Brownie J. Samoka. We spoke about Arizona Cummings as well. So if you want to participate, if you want to make your input tonight, all you need to do, you can call this number 401-359-5072. We have 10 minutes to be here to listen to your input, or you can forever hold your peace. If you want to rebut some of what I said here tonight, the number to call tonight, you can see it slide on the screen, or if you cannot see that number, you can just go right to the Looking Hours and say 401-359-5072. So this is the number to call and participate. If I said something you believe I'm in error and talk about your political leader in the fashion that you believe that I'm in error, you can also go ahead, join the conversation. Let's have this conversation. Do Joseph Walker represent the future? Is Joseph Walker is the right person come 2023? Should we allow President Weah stay in power for the next 6 years? Should Mr. Cummings be exonerated and contest in the next presidential election? What's your view? And I'm here for the next 10 minutes. I'm out of here. If you just joined me, you are on the Logan's Hour. All right, so while you're trying to place a call, I will just play my game music again. So you can just rest assured I'm gonna play this person who I love so much. MC Cairo, she came from disgrace to grace. So I play her music. That's my girl, MC Cairo. So MC Cairo. Cairo. Smart day. I know about it, don't ask me. I want now or there, don't ask me. And I know say it, don't ask me. And I yes, don't ask me. And I know about it, don't ask me. I want now or there, don't ask me. And I know say it, don't ask me. And I yes, I just wanna I don't wanna check my balance. I just wanna I don't wanna check my balance. I just want to do my thing and I just for CCP. He said Caro, I said Jack. All right, so all right, we've been here for an hour now. We'll be leaving shortly. It's just somebody making me laugh. The person saying, "My man, you own all Papa too much." Or what are you talk? Anything you talk to that Papa will carry. That's fair. If you want to take him, fine. I'm not saying that Joseph Boakai shouldn't be the next president of the Republic of Liberia. So you can also vote your candidate. But just trying to talk about the leadership style of Mr. Boakai tonight. That's what I spoke of. Mr. Cummings' leadership style will also come on serious scrutiny too at a later date. So we will also talk about whoever person, Dr. Cassell or whoever person. So don't believe that I hate Mr. Boakai so much that I don't want Mr. Boakai to become the next president of the Republic of Liberia as well. But I just talking about his poor leadership style. He need to step up. The reason sometimes people do these kind of a constructive criticism because they want the leaders to step up. They want the leaders to be better. So uh, that's just it for tonight. So if you live in any part of Indiana or you live in a part of the US, if you want to ship, we have Columbus Zena. So you see here, that's Z Logistic. He'll be shipping to Liberia. So you can contact him. They have the contact number here. It's 317-737-0936. Z Logistic. He do a whole lot of shipping, man. He ship from vehicle up to whatever you want to ship. This guy, he's reliable. I have shipped with him before. Trust me, your people are going to receive the stuff on time. And when he gave you dates, he's very consistent with the dates that he gave you. So if you're looking for anywhere to ship, trust me, this trademark, Z Logistic, don't go anywhere forward. Stop packing your barrels and just place the call to 317-737-0936. He's going to pick up for you as well. Thank you for following me tonight. Thank you for following Logan's Hour. I've been here for an hour now. I think I can take my leave. If I step on any toes tonight, I'm sorry. If any of my friends felt offended, I'm talking to your political leader, I'm sorry. I just spoke with a lot of. That's how it is. I had a lot of fire burning in me and so many things I needed us to talk about. And we talked about it already. Mr. Boakai and his surrogates, they're going to desist from that. If they find a new political marriage, we expect competition. We expect them to go to debate. We expect to go to primaries. We just don't want somebody just creeping on us and become the next president. So thank you for following us tonight. We want to say lock your door, lock your windows, and bye-bye.